for January 15th of '08. Moved by Inman, seconded by Flees. Any further discussion?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, but there was one thing in the minutes, and if I could find them, I can remember it. When I mentioned at the last meeting that I would provide some information on Carver, I said board members, not boards. So I just wanted to put the member in that wording.
Meaning?
My understanding was you were going to get us counties that used Carver, that you told us had used it, and you were going to provide that to us so that
No,
we could check that out.
I thought specifically I mentioned Three Rivers Area Hospital Board and the individual that I spoke with. I thought I said board member.
No. I requested specifically, having gone through Carver training, worked on a Carver board, attended meetings with Carver model being used, I was requesting counties that used it and
Okay.
further information. So, I mean, but that's,
All right.
We can make the change.
Yeah, we can change
Could I
it.
ask a question? Are you aware of any counties that use it?
Quite honestly, no.
well, we'll make a note of that in the minutes and look forward to getting
There are some
information.
cities. There are some cities, but I'm not aware of counties.
Okay. Well, if you could get that information to us, that'd be great. All right. Any further discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. All right, we have a chance, 2 chances for public comment. We have limited public comment at this time. Is there any member of the public that wishes to address the LNA committee? All right, there will be a second chance.
Go ahead.
Oh, please. I'm sorry, I was looking there and I didn't.
Oh, we're on the agenda. I'm Karen Skibronski.
If you could please come up to
Please
the
come up
Yeah.
to the,
microphone.
and introduce yourself,
Okay.
and please
Hold on.
try to speak into the microphone, because it's being televised.
Yeah.
You don't know from where, but it's being televised.
Yes, welcome.
Good morning. I'm Karen Skibronski, the Assistant Superintendent at the Traverse Bay Area Intermediate School District. And this is Yvonne Donahoe, our Early Childhood Coordinator. And we're here this morning to tell you a little bit about our efforts across the 5-county region with early childhood, and specifically for the Great Start Collaborative. And Yvonne will provide you with that information.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We had been asked by the State Early Childhood Investment Corporation to apply for a grant that would provide our 5-county region with a Great Start Collaborative. The collaborative is a early childhood initiative that really would be looking towards strategic leadership and sort of steering and guidance for our early childhood communities. In every county across our 5-county region, we have community collaborative structures and early childhood work groups, and a missing piece has been kind of an infrastructure piece at that higher level component. The Early Childhood Investment Corporation specifically asks that business, philanthropy, local government, and parents are part of that structure. It's been a long missing structure for our early childhood and our human service agencies. And so this morning, earlier the week, I had talked to Herb Lemkel, and we were talking about whether or not, as part of the local government structure, he or someone from this county commission would be interested in representing on this board on the Early Childhood Investment Corporation Great Start Collaborative, which will be chaired by Mike Hill and Karen Skidonsky and Doug Luciani, the CEO of the Chamber. And so we're looking currently for representation from this board, from Herb or anyone from this board to be part of that local government structure. I brought some packets. I'm not sure if you're interested in.
Please.
That would be great.
In the meantime, while Yvonne's passing out, Dennis, you had a comment?
Yeah, I spoke
Thank
with
you.
Yvonne yesterday. Herb, I thought Herb might be able to be here this morning. He wasn't sure, but Herb asked that we add this to the agenda for you so that you were aware. It was unclear whether or not the county board really needs to take any action on this because basically it's an individual committing his time to participate. But I think they would appreciate the board's support of the program. My suggestion might be, and it's really up to the board, the committee, how you'd like to handle this, would be to go ahead and authorize Herb, since he's volunteered to go ahead and sit as a county commissioner who'll bring back information to you. And then we could take the time to go through this packet, and if you wanted to do a resolution of support at the board meeting in 2 weeks, you could do that, and that would be something to add to the kind of the credibility of the project. So that would be my suggestion.
Is that good with you, Sonny?
Yeah, I guess, I don't know that this is necessarily a board chairman appointment. It's not going to be this individual is not going to represent the county commission officially, I don't believe is what you're asking for, then, correct?
Not specifically representing the county commission, but I think that really the intention of the ECIC, the Early Childhood Investment Corporation, is to have community leaders that have access to decision-making sort of bodies, and so more of a communication link than a direct decision-maker at that table.
Under the understanding that it is truly that it is an interaction type thing, I think, I have no problem with that. I want to just understand that, any views voiced by a commissioner that's on your board would have to come back to the full county board at their meeting in order to be ratified if we were going to make any sort of commitments.
For decision-making, yes. What we
Yeah,
want is this
okay.
knowledge base. So we have knowledge
that
base
we
from
can provide. That we can
educators,
provide.
commissioners, governmental agencies, all kinds of agencies.
Sounds like Sonny and Dennis, Herb's the one. There,
Great.
good.
We'll have Herb do that.
And then,
We can refer
do you have any
this to the
further
board.
comments that you'd like to make? As we've got materials now to review, and
We've
Go
been,
forward.
we've been actively working with many agencies and collaboratives in early childhood, and this is going to help us make another link. So we appreciate your support in this. Thank you.
thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that this be added to the county board's agenda for a resolution of support, and that the packet also be duplicated and forwarded to the other commissioners who are not here this morning.
Chris will get that squared away. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you getting here this morning. All right, moving on. Any further public comment? Okay, moving on to administrator evaluation. Chairman Wheelock.
Okay, last month at our Board of Commissioners meeting, we received a detailed analysis from the county administrator as to what he felt was his 2007 accomplishments. Commissioner Lemkool made some comment to me afterwards about, if we were going to do an evaluation of the administrator. I went back and looked at a form that we'd used previously. That's in your packet today. I also have copies of forms that the City Commission uses for the city administrator and the Airport Commission uses for the airport manager. I have a really tough time with trying to compile an evaluation down to a series of numbers. I'm not sure that's the effective way to do it. In the last year that I've been chairman, I speak to the county administrator basically every day. We have an open door policy. We meet regularly and evaluate all the issues that are going on in the county. And I know that he has an open door policy for all the commissioners. And the 8 years that I've been here, almost 10 years that I've been here, it's always been, if I had any questions, I called or stopped. And I somehow or another, I have a really tough time with allegations that have been made in the newspaper and on the TV that the county administrator is not doing his job. That is certainly not my opinion. I personally resent the insinuation that commissioners have been negligent in not reviewing his performance. I believe that we effectively have done that. We may not have a compilation of numbers, but we have evaluated the commissioner or the administrator on a very regular basis. And if we want a compilation of numbers, here's a form by which we can do that.
Larry?
I would certainly agree with Sonny's comments regarding the administrator's performance. But I think a form, like we've used in the past, prior to my time, is an antiquated way of evaluating the administrator. I think the administrator with his, like for example, his 2008 primary goals and objectives, it's a very unfair situation for Dennis to evaluate him on a form with some numbers once a year. If this commission is doing their job correctly, in my opinion, we would engage him throughout the year, and if there's something that we see that's lacking, we would bring it to his attention so he's able to correct it instead of having to wait a whole year. I think Dennis does an excellent job. And like I said, I agree with Sonny as far as appeared in the media and stuff. I don't understand why that's occurring. Thank you.
Larry, other Larry.
I would say that having something like this, I think would be, at least as part of one component of how we work with our administrator, to have a review annually on these areas would be fine with me. But I think that it's important to note that that the primary review process is his work plan and his update he gives to the board quarterly, and the input he receives from the committee system and as well from the board level as to how things are going each month moving forward through the year. So I would say that this particular form, if we use it, should not be deemed as the only component for the evaluation. This would be one small component of an evaluation process that we really do review, which we have done throughout the whole year, and we have done every year since he's come on board. My personal opinion is that he's done an excellent job since the day we've hired him, and in past discussions with him and looking at reviews, I saw nothing that really fell below exceeding requirements, but I would be happy to fill out this form and to get it back to the chairman, perhaps with a few remarks, but overall I believe he has done an excellent job. And I'd like to footnote one thing, if I could. And I did have this meeting with our county administrator, Dennis Aloya. He's really doing the work of two people, and I think we recognize that over the years. And our work plan and his work plan has continued to increase over the years. And some days I wake up and really am astonished that he gets done as much as he does get done. And I think we have to recognize that if a few things take a little bit slower to do, we have to recognize the work level that we have on him. And it's been his choice and the commission's choice not to go out and hire, for example, a special projects manager or an assistant administrator like we've had in the past, like we had for former county administrator Kay Rothschilds. So we have to take that into account, that in order to save some money for the taxpayers, Dennis is really doing, in my opinion, double duty. And if the commission feels that we need to, and if the administrator feels through this process that we need to give him some assistance, I think that should be discussed with him.
Christine?
I have not heard any commissioner, myself included, insinuate or allege that the county administrator has not been performing his job. What I have said is that I believe an annual performance assessment is necessary. I don't believe anyone is perfect. I believe everyone has areas where they can improve. I believe that it is the county board's job. It is their most important job and their primary responsibility to hire, fire, and evaluate one individual, the county administrator. I believe that needs to be done on an annual basis. I believe it needs to be done in writing per the contract that we have with the county administrator. And I also believe that we need to go over the administrator's work plans with him on a regular basis. And I will give you just one example why I think this is the case. Under financial planning, continue lobbying efforts to minimize local funding reductions on a state level and increase revenue options on a state and federal level. I'm a big believer in performance measures. What I would like to know is how much time does the county administrator anticipate that this is going to take? What is the return on the investment that we hope to get from his time? Should he even be doing this? Perhaps it would be more effective if Commissioner Schmidt worked on this, or Commissioner Inman, or you, Mr. Chairman. I really do believe that it is our responsibility, and we're not performing it if we do not do an annual performance review in writing.
Dennis?
One suggestion that I agree with Commissioner Inman's, all of your comments generally. First of all, Commissioner Maxbauer, your comment about the work plan, that's why you were given the work plan in January. And the idea was, I gave it to you and I said, please let me know what the commission wants changed on this work plan, because I need to have it developed so that I can know what you want done and I get a final work plan that you've approved so that I can go through the year doing it. Commissioner Inman, I appreciate all the positive comments that I heard, I really do. Based on the comments you made, though, I have no problem with a written work plan, or with a written evaluation. Frankly, last year we didn't do the work plan for the first time, and as such, there is a void there, and I think to fill that void would be good. One suggestion that you might consider in the future is, as you said, a combination. And, maybe half of this, or maybe some percentage of this, 30%, 40%, 50%, 70%, would be the written evaluation. Maybe there'd be an extra question at the end that is worth some amount, 50% of the total, that is, how did he follow the work plan? How did he accomplish the goals? So that may be something for you to consider that would allow you to do both. And I think that, something to consider for next year. But obviously, 2007 is done, and I think it is good that you give me an evaluation so that I know where I'm at.
Larry?
I think that with respect to like the example you just brought up, the collaboration and working with the state and federal government and those kinds of things and trying to seize money, that has been a team effort. And I would suspect that a lot of things that are in Dennis's plan, some you could indicate are team goals. And because, we have a model here in Grand Traverse County where the commissioners are involved in the committee system. We're involved with our state association, the Michigan Association of Counties. We're very involved in the National Association of Counties. We're out in the community working with township governments and city governments. So there are probably things that we would put in Dennis's plan, because he would come back and actually assist us in some part of that process, like getting letters out and providing legislators with information if we need to get stuff to them. But though that particular item, in terms of an example, is really a team effort. And so when you go through an evaluation, you have to recognize that part of the work plan does tend to fall on the team, and the team is the County Board of Commissioners.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Chris?
Dennis, I do appreciate when you handed the work plan to the board that you did say, if you have any suggestions or changes, please let me know. However, I don't feel, and perhaps this is because I've only been on the board for a year, I don't feel that it's my place necessarily to come to you as just one person and say, well, I don't like this goal, I think it should be something else. I'm more comfortable...
Excuse me one second.
Certainly.
I'm sorry.
I'm more comfortable sitting perhaps with my fellow board members and hearing what they have to say, because their opinion may not be mine. And that's why I've not mentioned this up until this time.
Oh, no, I didn't mean to infer that you should mention it to me. In fact, you're absolutely right. It should be the board who looks at that, and if you have a meeting where you say, let's look at this work plan and change anything that needs to be done, I would encourage that.
And I would like to do that.
On the other hand, I want to say this because I mean this in all sincerity, Commissioner. You've said it over, you've said it in the paper, you've said it on TV, that your number one priority is managing me and evaluating me. If you have concerns, other than pool, if you have concerns that you need to address with my work performance, I think you're right. It is one of your number one priorities. And you've been in my office at least 6 times in the last 3 months on pool issues and other things, and you have never once mentioned the septic treatment plant to me, to the chairman of the board or to the county board. So I have to tell you that I resent and don't appreciate the fact that you take your issues first to the newspaper and the TV station rather to me, your employee, who you have issues with. And in the future, I would appreciate if you would either do that through the county board chairman or through me, but I think I'm owed that degree of respect rather than to read it in the newspaper first. And I would appreciate you taking that into consideration.
Christine, and then Larry.
Dennis, I did not mention the septic treatment plant at the January board meeting because Commissioner Inman did, and I felt that it was not necessarily necessary to repeat what he said. It wasn't in your work plan, and I believe it needed to be. He mentioned that, and that was fine. In the future, if you would like me to echo someone else's opinion, fine, I'll do that.
No, I'd prefer you give me your own opinion, and I prefer you either do it to me.
Well, I'm saying echo it when I agree.
Well, Commissioner, that was brought up by Commissioner Inman, and the next day, we got on it and started it. And then, 7 days, 8 days later, I'm reading it in the newspaper, and I don't quite understand that. If you would have called me and said, have you started it? And I said, no, we aren't doing anything on it, I could understand. But I don't understand why why your comments wouldn't have been appropriate at the meeting with the other commissioners. You just got done saying that you believe your role on my work should be in working with the other commissioners to do that. Well, you didn't mention working with the newspaper to do that, and I just don't understand why that discussion didn't take place more adamantly at the board meeting rather than not say a word and then have it in the newspaper 8 days later. It just seems like it doesn't give me the deference that I deserve as your employee, which you said is one of your primary responsibilities. Frankly, almost the only conversations you and I have, which are limited, are on how you feel we unacceptably run the pool that you swim in. And frankly, you know, I'm thinking that's a very low issue on the priority of all the things we have to do. And I'm just asking you, if there are issues you have with me or issues that you feel performance needs to be improved, my suggestion is, and I agree with Commissioner Fleece, once a year on a written plan is not enough. You need to make those known to the chairman of the board or to the board members. I believe you owe that to me as an employee that you are supposed to be managing.
Larry?
In my opinion, if we're going to do a performance evaluation on Dennis, the best performance evaluation, I believe, would be a blank sheet of paper handed to each commissioner. But then again, you're limiting yourself to, unless you're doing it quarterly or something, yearly or quarterly. I think the way we've been operating, when we have a problem or a deficiency that we feel Dennis is doing, we bring it to his attention, and he corrects it or works on it. As far as the administrator's comments on you and the media, you're a great disillusionment to me. You're grandstanding. I get the newspaper this morning, I open it up, there you are again, you're on the TV. You're only 1/9 of this board, and I would say I don't understand how come you're being an instant expert all of a sudden in all kinds of matters. Defibrillators, how many are in the county? You probably don't have any idea. But yet you're pointing fingers. I would submit that if there's a problem at the pool, you would have handled it correctly and through the chain of command. But to do what you're doing, you're misusing your authority as a commissioner. FOIAing the county, Freedom of Information Act. I don't understand that either. Suing the county board. I never understood that either. And I think you are totally out of place. And I think you ought to examine yourself and your actions, particularly with the media.
Christine?
Regarding the pool, November 10th and 11th, I was in Louisville, Kentucky, and the swimmer next to me, Ken, 63 years old, dropped on the pool deck. The only reason Ken was alive was because a defibrillator was working and people there were trained to use it. When I came back that week, it was the second week in November, I asked Jason Jones, if we had defibrillator maintenance records. I asked again in December. I asked again in January, and Dennis is exactly right. I met with him about 6 times, and every single time I asked for that information. I finally FOIA'd the information, and there wasn't any. And I'm sorry that I had to do that.
I submit to you.
Now, as far as the media goes, when I am called by a newspaper, when I am called by a TV station, and I am asked for a comment, or if I am asked a question, I always answer it. And I will continue to do that.
Christine, I have firsthand knowledge that when you were taping meetings, you took the tape of those meetings and immediately, sometimes made phone calls prior to the end of the meeting.
What?
You have provided the media with things and said, I think you ought to view this. And now, I find it really funny that we have the rest of the board not receiving all these calls, but you're sure getting a lot of them, and you're probably the least experienced. Look at the number of years' experience you have on this board, and my way of thinking, spokesman for this board, the majority of the time, should be Chairman Wheelock. And because we're spinning our wheels, we're not getting anywhere, you're certainly not serving your constituency doing this.
Sonny?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to try to pull this back in a little bit. The discussion today has to do with the evaluation form that I submitted to you for the county administrator.
And we can take up the pool issue.
I think
another-
we
at
obviously
another
have a
date.
number of other issues, but the fact is, the issue that's on your agenda today is the evaluation of the administrator. I have provided you with a form in the letter that I sent to all 9 commissioners. I've asked that these be completed and back to me by the end of the month for the county board meeting, and that Vice Chairman Limcool and I will evaluate, or will review these, compile the numbers, sit down with a meeting with the county administrator, and then we'll report back to you at Ways and Means or the Board of Commissioners meeting in March.
Good idea, Mr. Chairman. Christine?
I have a question on your letter, Mr. Chairman. The last paragraph says, in the future, we may want to consider the possibility of expanding this evaluation to include department heads and other employees. Dennis, do we do annual reviews for our employees in the county?
Not all employees, no. Years ago, there was a program put in called PDP, Professional Development Plan, that was begun back in, I think, the late 90s. At that time, the county had an employee that was hired. I think Commissioner Inman will remember that was specifically hired there to work on safety teams, employee development, and those kinds of things. And then that employee was eliminated, a couple of years after that. So it never got completely off the ground. Some of our employees, a number of my department heads do PDPs with me. Some of my departments, we do evaluations, but it's not consistent from place to place. And that's why when Commissioner Wheelock asked me about that, Chairman Wheelock asked me about that, and said he suggested that we consider that. I think that's a very good idea to consider it. It has some issues that we'll have to deal through. For example, you can't just implement that, I don't believe, with our union contracts. We're going to have to work through some of those issues with unions if we decide to take it that far. But certainly in terms of department heads, that's something that can be done. But I'd want to evaluate it with staff and with the board before we made any decision on it. But I think it's definitely worth looking at.
When I drafted the letter, I talked to Dennis and I also talked to Brenda, because we really have to know, one, whether we can legally do these type of things with our union contracts, and secondly, decide what the best way to do that is. And Brenda and I have talked about setting up a meeting. I just have not had an opportunity in the last week or so to do that.
All right.
I think Brenda wanted to make a comment in that
Thank
regard
you.
to Wayne, if you would, please.
Mr. Chairman?
Oh, did Brenda want to?
I had something
Dennis?
else. My question, or one other thing I would suggest is that if the board is more comfortable with, once the evaluation is complete, rather than Commissioner Lemkool and Commissioner Wheelock meeting with me, I'm also willing to meet with the board to discuss the evaluation if that's preferable to the board.
I think I'm comfortable with
From
that.
from my perspective,
Yeah.
that's the responsibility of the chairman and the vice chairman to do the first round, and then after that's
Right.
done, then we bring it to the board.
Right.
Yeah, I
That's
agree
true.
100%.
It's the way it's worked well. All right, any further discussion on this three-page evaluation?
Well, it does provide, Mr. Chairman, comments on the side, and if the commissioner wants to expand the comments, they can, they can write it out and
Piece of
attach
paper
it.
in it.
They can attach
All
it
right.
to the review, but at least it outlines some of the
Well,
basic
it
areas.
outlines 11 different fields, and it gives us some sort of description of what we're evaluating in those. I looked at the one that the city has, and basically, there's no description of what you're evaluating in the categories. They're numbered 1 through 5, and you just rank them. Well, this one specifically talks about what we're evaluating in each of these 11 categories.
All right. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I don't know if we had do we have a motion support on this?
Oh,
We
I
didn't-
thought, sorry.
We didn't have a motion.
I thought we
don't
made
think
a motion.
We don't need one, just a consensus, that's fine.
Do we need a motion or just consensus? Consensus. Good.
If I can make a remark, Mr. Chairman, before we move on to the next comment. I think that I would, as one commissioner, ask the chairman to review the possibility or other possibilities to help facilitate commissioner questions or commissioner inquiries regarding things that may come up, that I think that those particular inquiries or questions, rather than going to department heads and administrator and trying to find out information about other things in the county, I think maybe the thing to do to bring it to the discussion would be to have that commissioner refer their question to the appropriate committee. And if there wasn't a committee that's really designed to, to deal or discuss that particular question, then it would go to the board. So I would, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Wheelock, I would just ask you to give some thought as to a proper process to use that commissioners can follow that would be, I think, easier on staff and easier on our administrator in terms of their time allocation.
All right, moving on to Parks and Recreation, proposed Parks and Recreation rules. Tim? And if you'd be just so kind to introduce yourselves.
Tim Schreiner, the Parks and Recreation Director, and then with me is Tom Jenkins, a longtime member of the Parks and Recreation Commission and volunteered to serve as the chairperson of the Rules Subcommittee approximately 6 months ago. What we found last year was that the rules that the Parks Commission has been working under, that we've had posted at various facilities, were done in the mid-'70s, before there was even the County Board of Commissioners, still Board of County Supervisors, I believe. Anyhow, the smoking issue had come up and a couple of other issues had come up, and we decided that instead of just addressing one or two issues, we needed to review the entire set of rules from the Parks Commission because of their nearly 30 years old. And so Commissioner Jenkins and several other commissioners started meeting and looking at the old rules, comparing them with rules of other counties and of the state, for state parks, for example. Met with prosecuting attorney's assistant Bob Cooney and Sheriff Fewens, and went through things and brought these rules back to the Parks Commission several times. And what you've got in front of you is a set of rules that would be base rules that would cover all 11 of our properties, approximately 1,800 acres. So every one of our park properties would have those rules if you adopted them. After this base set of rules gets adopted, and if you desire to change it at all, you can, because it's basically become your rules, not ours. We're simply recommending them to you. But once that base set of rules is completed and adopted, then the Parks Commission, probably again through the subcommittee, will start looking at another subset of rules for each property specifically. And the reason for that is, in the variety of properties we have, the way the Civic Center is used and the number of visitors using the Civic Center It's very difficult to compare and have the same rules for that as you would Maple Bay or the Nature Reserve. Power Island's used far different than Twin Lakes is. And so, again, these would be base rules that would cover all properties, and then we would bring back to you at a later date sub-rules that would be specific for each particular property, or we may group several. We may say the Civic Center's got a subset, Nature Reserve, Power Island, Maple Bay may all be under a similar subset for those three properties. So with that, I'll let Commissioner Jenkins talk a little bit more about the process.
Thanks, Tim. Got to looking at this some time ago because more and more the term unwritten rule was popping up. We did some research. The only written rules we found for the parks and recreation in this county was signed by George McManus in 1969. Most of them are obsolete. Some of those were not even legal. I'm not even sure the thing was ever made an ordinance. So because of that, the commission got to talking about maybe we need a definite set of ordinances. I'm thinking two specifically, that would assist the park staff as well as the law enforcement agencies of this county in maintaining law and order and the common peace in our parks. To give you a little background for those of you who don't know me, I come with 35 years of experience in Michigan State Parks and the Wildlife Division of the DNR. In my last 20 years, I was an administrative officer for both of those divisions. I did extensive work in codification of state laws as far as working in the outdoor recreation area and wildlife in relation to wildlife hunting laws. We would like to get this cleaned up because really it is a county commission issue that parks do not have a current functioning set of ordinances by which the public can be controlled. Tim referred to our proposal that we come out with two ordinances. The first one you have before you. It's a set of general land use rules. It's based on a number of sets of land use rules. Specifically, we looked at Oakland County's park system, which is the biggest county park system in the state, and also at the state's land use rules. These are general land rules, 18 general land use rules that we feel would apply to all of our properties. It would be something that could be posted, that the public would be aware of. It would be something that the law enforcement agencies of this county could use as a basis for dealing with a situation if something came up. The second ordinance that I would propose, that Tim also referred to, would be one ordinance that would identify specific land use rules for specific properties. It would have sections for each property that needed additional ones. There would be more rules maybe for the intensive use properties such as the Civic Center, as opposed to extensive use properties like the 160 acres of county land out in the middle of Whitewater Township. So we think that if we had these two ordinances, that it would be beneficial to running our system and to also maintain the order in the county. The committee came up with some general ideas. We met initially with Bob Cooney and asked him for his assistance from the legal standpoint. The first issue that we had was whether this was even our authority to do. And we found out through, as it says right at the top of our draft, Michigan Compiled Law 46364 of 1965 is where the state gives local units of government the authority to do this. So that question came up yesterday with the Physical Resource Committee, and that is the background law by which we are authorized to do this. There was two issues that came up in our discussion in the commission that I'd like to address. One of them was vagrancy. Commissioner Maxbauer brought to our attention the issue of vagrants using county park property during off hours and not using it properly. We discussed vagrancy. We find the county has a vagrancy ordinance. We've talked to Scott Fewens about it. The biggest issue with law enforcement agencies in this county is what to do with a vagrant. a vagrant is not violating the law. You can't put them in jail. There literally is nothing to do with it. It's a bigger social issue than Parks and Recreation. You will find in this draft that there's language in there regarding when parks are open. And technically, we could use that as a basis for a misdemeanor violation. The other issue that we discussed quite a bit, and there are those of us that feel strongly about this, as well as others that feel more strongly about about personal rights, is the smoking issue, exterior smoking issue in our park properties. Now, once again, there is an issue that in some of our park properties is becoming a serious problem. Secondary smoke is a big problem with a lot of people, including myself. However, I could not see applying that ordinance to all of our properties, as this request does. So that would be an issue that would be addressed on selected park properties where intensive use is more predominant. However, the commission does feel that there are 28 county properties under your purview. Only 11 of them are county parks. So if exterior smoking is on county property is an issue, we think it ought to be addressed as a county issue and not specifically a parks issue. It would be very confusing to the public. This property behind the governmental center down along the river, is that a county park? No, it's not. Can they smoke there but not smoke on Power Island? You see what I mean? It's a very confusing issue and it should be addressed, we feel, as a county property issue and not a park property issue. But it would be addressed in the second set of rules for specific properties. I'm thinking specifically off the top of my head without the committee even meeting yet. Would be maybe the Civic Center, where we have a big group of people at once. Maybe Twin Lakes at the campus out there would be appropriate, but certainly not appropriate in Whitewater Township. An issue that came up yesterday also was the issue about dogs on leashes and cleaning up after dogs. Once again, this is an issue that I told Commissioner Lemkool that we will address on specific properties. Once again, it would be appropriate in some places it would not be. Now, we're hoping that through the codification of these general land use rules for the park system in this county and a subsequent ordination of them, and that we could start to get a system of laws that can be used to effectively manage your parks in this county.
One thing, and adding what Tom said, yesterday when Herb asked about the picking up after dogs, I stated that I believed it was already in the county dog ordinance. I was incorrect. It's in the city animal ordinance, but it's not in the county one. And so I just wanted to make sure that you understood that. Yesterday I thought one, it was actually the city, so anyhow.
Mr. Chairman, I also wanted to mention that Physical Resources took this issue up. It's your issue, but they heard the presentation yesterday and they passed a resolution supporting it and asking it to be sent, to you for your decision on it. So I wanted you to know Physical Resources approved it.
Sonny?
I guess, first and foremost, I appreciate everyone's time. These are complicated things to deal with, and they're very time-consuming, trying to figure out how to get them written down and get them clear to everyone to read. The people of this community are very blessed with our expansive park system. I'm going to say that by far the vast majority of the community does not have any idea how much parkland we have and how much public land we have that's available to them for recreational purposes. This is a really comprehensive plan, and I really appreciated everyone's efforts, and I liked reading through it. I have a little problem in my mind calling it commission property. And I know it's just a terminology thing, but, I think it's important that we denote that this is county property. It is not Parks Commission property. This is county property. If there's an issue on that property, it's the responsibility of Grand Traverse County to handle that. It's not, if I can guarantee you, if someone falls out of a swing at the Civic Center, the Parks Commission doesn't get sued, the county does.
And that,
I agree, Sonny. I use the word commission property in relation to the county commissioners, yourselves, who are the elected officials representing the people of the county. That was my intent on that.
Well, except if I read the definitions, commission property shall mean all lands, waters, property administered and under the jurisdiction of the Grand Traverse County Parks and Recreation Committee.
I questioned that with Bob Cooney. I really did. I said, wait a minute here. We're not, this isn't ours, this belongs to the county. And he said that language was legal. So we could readdress that.
That's the only piece that I had a problem with.
Okay, Tim?
If I could, that goes back to Act 261. Your Parks Commission is an advisory committee or commission to you, the county board. And so, within the language of 261, that's how that gets put into where this commission is recommending to you, the county board, that lands that are under the advisory of the county Parks Commission are what we're identifying, so.
As opposed
it has-
to governmental center or
Correct, and so it's-
DPW garage or
and-
something. Christine?
The only part I read, well, one of the parts I read that I you know me, I prefer no smoking on county property, but that being set aside, the only part I really was uncomfortable with was the idea that the director of Parks and Rec can allow alcohol at his discretion. I really think that we have to have some kind of standard criteria that is his guideline. I just don't think it needs, I don't think it should be at his discretion. Oh, you like that?
I think
Good.
we all agree.
I'd like to,
Larry?
Well, I had circled that item, number 17 as well, because being a boater, I'm somewhat familiar with people pulling up to Power Island and they have a few beers in their cooler. And I don't know, you have a little picnic area at the Civic Center. I've never witnessed any issues or problems over there, but I don't know if somebody would bring a cooler and they'd crack a beer, you'd probably never know. But I would suggest, when you say you want to come back with some sub-guiding areas, there might be some locations that alcohol beverages would be allowable and others that will not. And I'm just assuming if it would be appropriate to pull 17 out of here and then come back and use that as your sub-guidelines for example, Power Island and the Civic Center or whatever.
So is that, okay.
That was my suggestion.
I'd like to address that in the background of that particular rule. We had a situation in the last year or so where the rugby organization sort of sublet the soccer fields on Keystone. They went about having a liquor license issued by the sheriff through their own auspices. We were not even aware of it until the day of the event. The intent of that rule is not to set up the director of parks to be a judge. It's to set him up to be a coordinator, to make sure that all the hoops, where a temporary liquor license may be appropriate, make sure the hoops are jumped through, and to make sure the thing is issued with the understanding and knowledge of the county and not around us. So that was the intent of that. Not that he's going to be, somebody comes in and said, we want to have a liquor, I guess it would be all right here. He would say, you have to do this and this and this and this. And the county would be aware of what was going on. We're thinking of things like a banquet at one of our facilities, perhaps, where they would ask to have wine served, not a beer tent. But once again, I wrote it down yesterday to revisit the alcohol thing, because there are properties where Power Island comes to mind, where alcohol use in the summer is readily rampant. So these things happen, and we know it happens on a lot of our properties. So. But that was the background of number 17.
Dennis, we have interviews we need to conduct. What would be your recommendation at this point?
You're looking for adoption of this month, Tim, or you, with the comments you've gotten from commissioners, you want to relook at this a little bit before we adopt? That's the question.
We can go one of two ways. Either the Parks Commission could spend some more time with Bob Cooney in trying to clarify, I think number 17 is with the alcohol, a little bit more on that. I think the smoking issue, as Tom has said, is something that the Parks Commission feels that if you as a county board want all county park property to be non-smoking, indoors and outdoors, then the Parks Commission feels that you should do it for all your county property versus just ours versus yours, so to speak. If you'd rather wait and let us do it on a site-by-site specific thing, then we'll do that.
I think the county will, can address the smoking issue, and if they don't, then the county board, then you can do that specifically for
Correct.
parks. But I guess my question is, and this is for both of you, if it's clear from yesterday's conversation and today's conversations that both committees feel that number 17 should not be left to the discretion of the director. It's unfair to you, it's ambiguous, and that's clearly how the board feels. So the question is that something, Tom, that you think your committee wants to look at again, or is it something that your committee is comfortable with the commission's feelings that needs to change, and having Tim work with Bob Cooney and maybe you to make a change to it and propose it right at the board meeting at the end of this month? That's the question.
If I may take your place there, we were going to come to you last month, and we realized we had an issue with bows and arrows and trapping. And Bob's recommendation was that the Parks Commission, with his assistance, take care of that before we present it. So based on that question, Dennis, I think that I would recommend we get together with Bob as a Parks Commission, take care of number 17. We may not come back with your satisfaction, but we'll address it to the best of our ability and do it that way, because we'd rather present you a clean document that you feel comfortable adopting.
I agree with that.
Okay, I'm gonna make a note. Sonny, then Larry, but when we're done with this issue here, we're gonna move to interviews, if that's okay. Move to interviews for Veterans Affairs and then the Airport Commission, and then resume our regularly scheduled agenda.
I guess
I always
the-
wanted to say that, regularly scheduled. So,
You got it.
Sonny,
You
then Larry.
got all that out, did you?
I did, I
Okay.
felt good.
I guess, my number one concern when we do ordinances is that we make sure that what we put down and document, we can enforce. And my concern is when we start regulating things like alcohol and smoking, we can't enforce it. We are not going to be policing the trails along the Nature Education Reserve. We're not going to have someone at Power Island, if the guy sits on the beach with a cooler and has a beer with it, or he's rented one of our campsites and decides to have a beer around the campfire with his family. I don't want to regulate things that we cannot enforce.
I think that type of thing is going to come up in the second ordinance that we're going to bring to you. And what I would like to do with that second ordinance would be to get the input, informal or otherwise, of all the county commissioners, and just ideas to kick out there to start with, so that we're dealing with people who are representative of the people and not the commission, not the Parks Commission. As far as enforcement goes, I have been in to visit with Scott Fewens with this draft. He brought the same thing. I'm not going to be sending people to sit on Power Island and control alcohol. But he agreed with this base ordinance as being a cover vehicle by which, should there be a problem, they could act on it and take a case to court. You can't take unwritten rules to court. And that was his concern. So even though you're right, they're not going to be a day-to-day law enforcement issue of all of these rules, but they would become a vehicle by which enforcement could take place if an issue arose. So.
Thank you. Larry, final comment?
I have to agree with the other commissioners on 17. We need to take that out. I think it needs to be addressed on a property-to-property issue. Also, number 5, under D, that's a very ambiguous statement, which you'd never be able to enforce that in court. In fact, the prosecutor's office would never issue, if the sheriff's deputy went in and made an arrest, for example, because some guy is shouting, there's no way they're going to issue a warrant. It's way too ambiguous. That language would have to be cleaned up. And there's some other ones in there of similar nature that are, and you say Cooney reviewed this?
Yes. Yeah, actually, we took the ideas to him. He put the legal language in there. And that particular issue, Larry, came out of the 1969 McManus version, by the way. I think it was addressed at where language is an issue, being foul language and abusive language, which also falls under the purview of disorderly persons for that matter.
Yeah, but you're aware of the decision, I forget the name of the river, over by Grayling.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
the canoe-
rancid language.
Right.
And the court ruled First Amendment rights. You know, the first judge didn't, but eventually it got appealed.
Okay, Larry, short and sweet.
Short and sweet.
Short and sweet.
As you know, the county commission passed a resolution many years ago that it was their intent to have a smoking ban at the Civic Center. And because it was, and we did as well do it in all county building facilities. And my understanding is that we've sort of, at that point in time, punted to you to have you put it in the rules or whatever mechanism would be appropriate. And for some reason, you know, for example, that didn't happen. But on the, so you're telling us today you'd rather not put that in the general rules. Is it your intent to punt back to us and say, you know, we're going to have to make some kind of decision on that? If we're going to stand by our current resolution, if we are, we're going to have to put something in place?
Larry, I think what they're saying is they believe it's a county issue that should address all county facilities, all county properties. But if you choose not to, then they will address it on an individual basis for individual parks that they think it's absolutely necessary to have. Is that correct?
That's right.
Correct.
We
So you
very
can address
probably
it.
would address it on the Civic Center subset of rules.
So you can address it on the subset? We
We're
don't-
not going to address it on the 160 acres out in Whitewater Township.
All right, I'm
Okay.
following you. All right, I'm following you.
Dennis,
That's good.
what action do we need to take at this time?
Well, I don't think you really need to take any action. You have indicated a number of issues that you'd like them to relook at. They've taken notes. Refer it back to them. And if I could, Mr. Chairman, I just want to thank Mr. Jenkins. Mr. Jenkinson has had some discussions about the possibility of leaving the Parks Board. And I just want to thank him for deciding to stay. It's
Yes.
very much appreciated, and your hard work is very much appreciated with
Thank
the
you.
board, so thank you.
Well, thank
Good
you very
about
much.
that,
I
so didn't have a
appreciate
chance.
that. It's an area I do have some expertise, and I would like to share it with the county when I do.
Larry, I just want to make sure I know you understand this, right? The Parks Commission advises to you folks, so when that Civic Center thing happened a couple of years ago, and you asked us to do it, we don't have the authority to create a rule. It's got to be done by you folks. And that was part of what led to what we're going through right now is we don't have the authority to do that.
But you can give us your expertise about where you think it's
That's where-
appropriate.
that's what
And
brought it.
unfortunately, I think that adoption and intent happened all during the Holzer case, and I think it kind of distracted our prosecutor at the time. If we remember, that very unfortunate incident, unfortunately, put that on the back burner.
Thank you. We'll see you next month.
All right.
I have one question. Is it your intent to try to get this in the 27th meeting if we clean up
No.
some things?
No.
Or let it ride?
If you're ready, you know, you can always bring it back, but I guess my preference is you take the time, get it the way you want it,
Bring it
and then
back
we'll
here
take
for-
care of it in March. Yeah, and we bring it back to LNA again.
Okay.
Thank you very
I
much.
think you did an excellent job on
Yeah,
it.
very much.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, but I feel it's the first shoe to fall. And I would really look forward to your input when we get around to the second stage of this thing, because that's where really the meat of this thing is going to be. This is overall land use. This is not specifics, and that's the important part, so, thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, I'm going to, with the committee's approval, I'm going to move to our interview section, which was going to be the last part. I want to say thank you to John Block and Chuck Lurchin there for being patient, and then I'm also going to say thank you to Dr. Beaker and Steve Cassens there, and Megan and Val for being patient too, and Daniel Arns, are you? Yep, thank you for your patience. So with that, we're going to move to commission interviews for the Veterans Affairs Board, and we had Brian Solomon. He withdrew his name as he is unavailable for morning meetings, and that also includes the Veterans Board. So that leaves John Block. If you'd like to come on up, we can do a quick interview. You're applying for... Good morning, John. Good to see you again. You're applying for the Veterans Affairs Committee.
Yes, sir.
All right, and if I remember, is it the is it the War on Terror seat, or which? Chuck?
Yeah,
If you'd like to give a little background and introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Chuck Lurchin, Director of Veterans Affairs for Grand Traverse and Leelanau counties. We did put out a request for applicants. The Veterans Affairs Committee, under Michigan law, Michigan Public Act 192, seats a county board of commissioners representative from all congressionally designated wartime eras or periods. So at the time of the request from the committee, we had seated a World War II veteran, a Korean War veteran, a Vietnam veteran, a Desert Storm veteran, and we were lacking a current global war on terrorism, Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan representative. So the intent of the board, this being a congressionally designated or declared war that is ongoing, was to get that generation of veterans, which continues to increase every day, representation on your board for Veterans Affairs benefits and issues that come before our office. Our first round of advertisements for applicants did garner 3 or 4 applicants that were determined not to meet the parameters that were established. They have to have service for this appointment. The parameters that you placed on it were that they had service after March 21st, 2003, up until including today, to present. And the applicants that we first received back in December, some of them didn't meet them, and then 2 of the applicants didn't meet residency requirements. They have to be a resident of Grand Traverse County. The second advertisement for applicants produced several. The one gentleman that was going to interview this morning withdrew yesterday due to time that he would be needed issues, which leaves us with Mr. Block. And I was sent by the Veterans Affairs Committee to confirm to you that he does meet the eligibility requirements. He does have the required minimum number of days of active duty military service after March 21st, 2003, with an honorable discharge.
Okay. All right, with that, we ask you a series of questions, and we have your, what?
I didn't get a copy of it.
Oh, you didn't? Here. Sorry. I think they're right here. Right there.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, I would also add, this would probably be up to you, but the length of this appointment is probably up to your discretion. Michigan Public Act 192 is clear that your current appointments are staggered, 4, 3, 2, 1-year appointments. This is an additional war era, and if you were to keep with the intent of that legislation, you would have to determine whether this was a 4 or 5-year appointment. If you determined it to be 4 years, you'd have 2 4-year appointments.
If we make it 5 years, we have 1.
My recommendation would, to keep with the intent of the law, would be to stagger it and make it a 5-year appointment.
Okay, duly noted. All right, with that, we have your resume here. We're going to ask a series of questions. Larry, would you like to start off?
Good morning, John. Thanks for coming in this morning. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
I know a lot of us know you from the Sheriff's Department and your longstanding history with us and an excellent work record here at Grand Traverse County.
Thank you.
Welcome back. John, briefly, why don't you tell us your interest in becoming a member of the Veterans Affairs Administrative Committee?
Well, I retired from the Coast Guard with a total of 23 years, some of that being prior service with the Air Force. Kept involved in veterans issues, member of VFW. Also have a part-time job with Reynolds Yonkoff Funeral Home, and I do the Veterans Affairs Assistance for Death Benefits. So on a daily basis, I work with that. and strong advocate of the Veterans Affairs, big fan of Grand Traverse County Veterans Affairs Office. And I don't say that lightly because, and again, in my part-time job, I deal with all the other counties in Michigan and outstate areas, and I really appreciate what they do. So just generally have an interest in it. I'm semi-retired now, and I have the time to devote to it, and I think I could be an asset to the committee.
Christine?
Mr. Block, I think you've pretty much answered this, but what previous experience in serving on committees or in community activities will enhance your contribution to the Veterans Board?
As far as volunteer work, my wife and I spent many years with the National Cherry Festival, and I'm back involved in it this year again with the Air Show Festival Committee. Been involved with the volunteer fire departments and other area organizations, so I think I could, I could put the time in it and take it seriously and do a good job.
Thank you.
Morning, John.
Morning.
Are you a year-round resident, and can you commit to attending monthly meetings, allowing additional time for special committees and projects of this board?
Correct, right. We stay here year-round.
I remember when the county hired John, and both the whole family is really community-oriented and volunteers. Both of John's children served as city police reserve officers for a number of years, and John has my highest regard.
I'm going to combine these last two questions. In your opinion, what are the functions of this board? What strengths will you offer to build a balance of expertise on the board? And how will you solicit opinion or views from people for the board?
Well, I guess I'll go backwards. Soliciting opinions through contacts with members of the VFW and friends and neighbors that are veterans. I think that... Can you help me with the other?
That's the first part.
Okay.
The second part of the question is, what are the functions of the board in your, and then also what expertise do you bring to help balance that?
Okay. Well, the expertise, I think I covered my time in the service. Right. My last 8 or 10 years in the Coast Guard, including year and a half active duty here during the time period. I was a investigative agent for the Coast Guard Investigative Service, and it's not as high-tech as Naval Criminal Investigative Service on TV. We're a lot poorer than that, but basically did that. So I got to meet with a lot of the veterans, active duty and reserves, with issues, and I've seen firsthand what the County Veterans Affairs Office does. They've helped me. I've applied for a disability. They're a great advocate for veterans that need help, explaining the process of applying and the paperwork and getting you set up for appointments and so on. They also have a limited budget and do well there in dispensing help as needed to area veterans, including death benefits, which I work with on a daily basis. So have a good, and I've attended a couple of the meetings to get a feel for it.
Great. All right, with that, we appreciate you coming in. Chris?
Mr. Chairman, can I just let you know that I advised Chuck the resolution to where you actually approved this position does indicate that it carries a 4-year term, and Chuck is fine with that.
Okay. All right, great. So with that, what we'll do is we'll deliberate after our next series of interviews. We'll be in contact with you, both phone call and letter. Is that correct, Chris? Or the procedure? That we write them a letter and that we also call them?
You'll be known.
And we'll let you know.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you. I appreciate your patience, too. A couple of hot issues before there. All right. Thank you, Chuck, for coming in. Next, we're going to do interviews, and again, thank you for your patience. We're going to conduct interviews for the Airport Commission, which is a Leelanau and Grand Traverse County authority. Steve Cassens is here with us. Dr. Steve Beaker is here with us, too. He sits on the Airport Commission. So if you'd like to come on up, Steve, and just sit there a moment, introduce yourself a little bit, and then what position we're interviewing for.
I'm Steve Cassens. I'm the Airport Director at Cherry Capital Airport. This is for a position on the Airport Board, and I believe it'll be a 3-year term. There's 5 members from Grand Traverse County, 2 members from Leelanau County.
Thank you.
And this is to replace Jim Minster.
And this is to replace Jim Minster. All right, Ms. Crandall, if you'd like to come on up first. Thank you for, again, being patient. You kind of heard how we do this. You saw it before there with John Block, ask you a series of questions. We have your resume and application here at the board. So, starting off with Larry.
Good morning, Megan. Thanks for
morning.
coming in. Briefly, Megan, can you tell us your interest in becoming a member of the Airport Commission?
Well, I think our airport is very unique in that, one, we have a brand-new, beautiful airline terminal and new CFR building and all these great developments that it's unique in Traverse City because we've never had to use bond money, raise money to do that. The airport is more or less self-sufficient, which is a unique situation. I went through the flight school at NMC, so I spent a few years flying there. I also worked while in flight school for the United Express carrier in town. So I've kind of seen the airport from many different angles. I've experienced our FBO. It's growing. There's lots of need for general aviation, and that's kind of my interest is continuing the work that needs to be done.
Okay, thank you.
Christine?
Megan, what previous experience in serving on committees or in community activities will enhance your contribution to this board?
Well, I've recently been thrown into the fire on the school board, so I'm a new member to the school board in January. So I've got lots of experience researching and doing that, and it's not, that's been ongoing for a couple of years, trying to be involved as I can. I've also been fairly active in the Chamber of Commerce, trying to participate there as much as I can also.
Megan, are you a year-round resident?
I am,
Can you commit to attending monthly meetings?
yes.
And do you have the time necessary for special committees or projects of the board?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. And as I've been doing combining the last two into a 3-part question, in your opinion, what are the functions of this board? What strengths will you bring to offer a balance of expertise? And how would you solicit views and opinions from the public?
Well, I guess I'll start with the last one first. We have some real stakeholders here. We've got NMC's flight program, who uses the airport and takes up space all the time. We've got the FBO, we've got Cherry Capital Aviation, we've got lots of general aviation programs going on there. But we also have the airline side. And I think it's important to keep in contact to know what the airline workers are doing, what the users of the airport feel, passengers, just the general public. And I think I've been pretty good about just bringing the topic up out and about. And I've definitely garnered lots and lots of response from that.
Functions of the board, and then how do you balance that expertise? What do you do to balance that out?
Well, the functions of the board, it's my understanding, it's an oversight. Most things, there certainly be responsibilities to research for individual members, but it's my understanding that Mr. Cassens would be executing decisions and would probably be presenting most of the recommendations for the board's approval and further discussion. And as far as the balancing section.
You bring expertise. What balance do you bring?
Well, I think my background in finance, I'm currently working on my chartered financial analyst designation. I'm in that program. And then also, as a realtor, I understand property issues locally. I don't understand all of the zoning, but I'll certainly learn.
All right. Any further questions? Thank you very much.
Coming this morning.
We mentioned, we'll be in contact with you shortly, and I appreciate you coming in. Thank you very much. All right. Daniel Arns? Great, thank you. Good morning. Thank you again for your patience.
Morning.
Good morning.
Daniel, can you tell me what your interest is in becoming a member of the Airport Commission?
I've spent quite a bit of time in industry, and I'd like to take my interest in aviation and participate in a very unique asset that the area has, being the airport.
Okay, thank you.
Christine?
What previous experience in serving on committees or in community activities will enhance your contribution to the Airport Commission?
I've spent 35 years in industry, and a lot of that was on committees, and so I've got quite a bit of experience there. Locally, I haven't been involved in county or township or city government. I am involved in my homeowners association as a past president. I'm also currently serving as treasurer, and I'm involved in church activities. I'm currently starting a term as a trustee for their church.
Are you a year-round resident?
Yes,
And can you commit to attending monthly meetings?
yes, I would.
And would your schedule allow additional time for special committees and projects of the board?
Yes, I'm retired and I do have some time.
Thank you.
In your opinion, what are the functions of this board? What strengths will you offer to build a balance of expertise on the board? And how would you solicit opinions and views from the public?
I believe this board is the public voice to help guide the airport operations activity and make sure that both pilot and non-pilot users' voices are heard by the operation. I think my strengths lie in the area of management. I've had personnel experience. I've had some financial experience. I'm an engineer by trade, and I would like to bring all of that to bear to help participate on the board and share my experiences and hopefully help the board with those experiences. Relative to soliciting opinions, I am a member of the local EAA chapter. I'm a member of the AOPA, and so I know a number of the pilots. I've attended, or I just recently completed instrument flight training at NMC Aviation School, so I've got experience with the college and know most of the people in the aviation area there. And I've also, a year ago, I spent about a year and a half weekly commuting to Chicago, so I'm fairly well versed as a passenger on a regular basis using the airport. I think I have a pretty broad background from that standpoint.
All right, thank you. Any further questions by the board? Seeing none? Again, we'll be in contact with you.
Okay.
Certainly
Thank you.
sooner than later, and I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, moving on to Valerie Kotanch. Again, thank you for being patient. Good morning.
Morning, Valerie.
Hi.
Thanks for coming in this morning. Valerie, can you let us know your interest in becoming a member of this committee, the Airport Commission?
Well, again, I believe that the airport is a unique asset for this community. With my background in the business community. I know that it's very important to have a well-operated airport and facility to help our area increase its economy and to be a support. I think that's a very important part that we need to look at as far as the community as a whole.
All right, thank you.
Valerie, what previous experience in serving on committees or in community activities will enhance your contribution to the Airport Commission?
Christine, I've had 10 years of experience on the Michigan State Plumbing Board on that commission. In my Zonta time, I've served on many different committees as well as on the board and as treasurer and as a secretary. My other aspects of my community involvement on boards and commissions, I was involved on the Republican Party committee. And so I've had quite a bit of experience working with others and on committees and researching and making decisions in that regard. So I hope that I can bring that to this committee.
Are you a year-round resident?
Yes, I am.
And can you commit to attending monthly meetings?
Yes, I can.
And your schedule will allow for special committees or projects of the board?
It would, yes.
Thank you.
Three-part question. In your opinion, what are the functions of the board? What strengths will you bring to balance out the board? And then how would you solicit the views of the public, views and opinions?
I believe that the commission is responsible for the operations of the airport, supporting the management and making decisions that will allow the operations to continue smoothly. My background is primarily accounting and business, budgeting, cost, and managing financial areas is my basic area of expertise. I run a business. I've had a lot of experience in various kinds of businesses and various types of, I guess I should say, budgeting and costing and just looking at things from that regard. I'd be more than happy to look at the operation from, as basically kind of as a new experience for myself. I would be happy to solicit information from the business community, general area. I will say I do not have a lot of expertise as far as the actual flying end of it. I am a user of the airport fairly often. I've seen some changes that have happened over as far as the years, and I think that we have a really great facility. I'd be really happy to be able to bring my expertise to bear in that, and I would be more than happy to get up to speed as far as becoming more, I guess, aware of the flight end of it as well as the user end of it.
One more question.
Clarify, Valerie, were you an elected official at some point in time with East Bay Township?
Yes, East Bay
So
Township.
you were a township trustee?
Yes, I was.
From 92 to 96?
Mm-hmm.
And was the Parks Commission, was that also an elected
Yes,
position
it
within
was.
the township?
It was. I was basically selected to fill in a term, an unfinished term of another individual.
All right.
And I chose not to run after that term.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you, Valerie. Some little horse there, that bug's going around. We'll be in contact. All right. Mr. Kevin Nelson, thank you again for your patience. Good morning.
Morning. Morning, Kevin. Thank you for coming in this morning. Could you please let us know your interest in becoming a member of the Airport Commission?
Well, I found out via the website that there was an opening.
Okay.
And 20 years in the industry and loving Traverse City, being involved in Traverse City, going on fourth generation now, as well as a user of the airline facilities as business traveler as well as vacationer, and then also on the other side of the airfield is frequent user of the FBO, primarily Harbor Air, and having served on the airport grounds in the U.S. Coast Guard. Wanted to offer my years of experience and my viewpoint from a Traverse City citizen to offer up interviewing for the position on the board. Didn't come to it with a strong motivation from since I was knee-high to a grasshopper to be on the Airport Commission, but saw the opening and heard a calling and figured I would throw my hat in the ring.
Thank you.
Christine?
Kevin, what previous experience in serving on committees or in community activities will enhance your contribution to the Airport Commission?
Well, I've been involved in the National Cherry Festival on and off since early teenage years. Am a 9-year member of the NMC Barbecue Board, finishing up a 2-year term as vice president, and I'll be starting a presidential 2-year term starting after this year's barbecue. And am on the appointed position on the County Parks and Recs Commission and chairing the pool subcommittee for evaluating the where we should go with the pool facility at Easlene or at the Civic Center. Outside of local government community service, in my service in the military, I was involved in some county boards or community boards and volunteer groups and stuff for some festivals and things around the country. And then in my business, I'm involved in associations within the industry, Helicopter Association International, Airport or Airplane Owners and Pilots Association, but heavily active as a Helicopter Association International member. I'm also an author in the industry, the aviation industry and the helicopter side.
Are you a year-round resident?
Yes, I am.
And you can commit to attending the monthly meetings?
I can commit to meetings. I do have client relationships in the industry that clients come first as far as scheduling, and I usually know a week or two in advance like that. But I've had on the Parks and Recs Commission in 16 months or so, I've been able to make every meeting as well as the subcommittee meetings.
And would your schedule allow for additional time to be spent on special committees or projects of the board?
Yes, I operate out of a home office and travel as necessary with the clients, but I'm in charge of my own schedule outside of being dad, so.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, the 3-part question. In your opinion, what is the function of the board? What expertise do you bring or strength do you bring to help balance out the board? And how would you solicit public opinion?
First, the purpose of the board, I think, is to give Mr. Cassens the insight that a somewhat of an outsider can bring in, looking at greater, bigger pictures. Steve's going to be involved in, as well as other field people who are employed at the field are going to be involved in the day-to-day operations, and having the board as an oversight or looking somewhat from the outside, having some aviation experience or financial experience. I have a degree in financial or management economics with strong financial management, and as, of course, running a business, I run my own numbers. But the board is going to, in my belief, is bring that measure of viewpoint that assists those who are in a day-to-day operation. Second part of the question, help me out.
Well, you described, and then what strengths you'll bring to build balance on the board?
From the aviation side, 20 years experience, nearly 20 years experience in the aviation industry, from many user groups or facilities at the airfield. I have a strong desire to continuously improve the area, and the transportation network is a strong aspect to our economic viability. And in part of my business operations, I'm involved in heliport design from the aviation consultant side and getting through, I'm working on a project right now in the Grand Rapids area, working through zoning issues and township acceptance of having heliports in those areas, and understanding what noise and the carbon footprint of airplanes and operations, what pressures could come to bear as far as the desire of some to move the airport to other locations or not allow funding or to stand in the way of that economic boom of having our airport right here. So God forbid it ever be moved to another location. And third part of the question, thank you.
Input, solicit views of the public.
Obviously, the technology of today with, the county website and email and things like that, I think is where, I use my input right now as best I can get, listening and talking, and within the industry, listening and talking, so.
All right, any further questions of Kevin? Seeing none? Thank you, Kevin, appreciate you coming in. You kind of know what happens, having served on Parks and Rec, how we notify. Larry?
Go with, I would just...
I'm just calling on you. Do we want to deliberate now, or do we want to go back to our agenda and deliberate at the end? Is there a preference?
My guess would be these folks are sitting here waiting for your answer, so maybe that would be
Okay,
appropriate.
which is kind of a first this time. But I'll call on Larry first, just a second, Sonny. You sit on the Airport Commission.
Yeah, just so I can make
So-
just a couple remarks, that recently appointed chair of the Airport Commission, and I just want to let everyone know that I appreciate you coming in today for the interviews. I think everyone did an excellent job in their questions, and very impressive in their backgrounds, the variety of backgrounds that you would bring to an Airport Commission, and we do have kind of a tough job up here. We wish we had 4 openings so we can put you all on. Unfortunately, we just have 1. And one of the things that we're struggling a little bit with presently is we have a number of new commissioners on the Airport Commission between Grand Traverse and Leelanau County. And outside of myself, as chair of the board, we really don't have a tremendous amount of strength in the area of budgeting and accounting and those kinds of areas when it comes to the budget. And we do have a committee that deals with, the Finance Committee that deals with recommendations coming to the board regarding the budget and the review of the annual report. Outside of myself, everyone has pretty much just kind of common basic understanding of accounting and budgeting. But we don't really have, someone on board that really has a strength in that area. I know I can't really speak for other airport commissioners, but it is our sense that in the near future there could potentially be another opening on the airport board, which would accommodate somebody with some aviation and some business experience. So if you're, just as a general comment, if you're not appointed today, don't lose faith that I think that, in the near future, hopefully we might have another opening, and we would invite those applicants that were not selected to come in and reapply, because I think everyone has really a tremendous amount of strength to bring to the Airport Commission that interviewed today. So with that, I just wanted to make some general comments about that, and then Mr. Chairman, let's just go. Well, why don't we just go to the Veterans Boards first, and then we'll come back to this.
Okay. We'll go to the Veterans Board, and Larry, you sit on that.
Yeah, I would move that we appoint John Block to a 4-year term per the resolution.
All right, is there a second?
Support.
Motion by Fleece, seconded by Max Bauer to appoint John Block to the Veterans Affairs. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Moving back to the Airport Commission. Sonny?
I guess the only question I would have would be for Steve. You know how this board works probably a lot better than I do, and you've been with them a lot longer than anyone else in the room. So tell me, is there an expertise that this commission needs? Because, we try to make sure that we balance the expertise and the qualifications of our board members.
Probably along the lines that Larry was talking about. We're probably getting a little weaker in the financial side. Engineering is always good. When we look at construction, if we have architects or engineers, there's a preference for that. We do have some flying background. It's good to get a mix of general aviation into what we do, because you're looking at both the air carrier side and general aviation. You have two different sides of the field that you're operating from. Right now, we do have representation on the general aviation side, so we're doing fairly good, but we could always use that expertise. It always helps them to understand what we're doing. On the other side of that, though, I agree with Larry in the sense that the financial side right now we could use a little stronger emphasis on, and looking at engineering and architectural. Those are the ones that we really should be looking for.
Thanks, Steve. With that, Larry?
Well, again, I want to tell you, this is a really difficult decision, and I will try to make a recommendation. For those that aren't recommended, please don't be offended. Because of Valerie's long-standing community service in our area, being a previous elected official in East Bay Township and dealing with township budgets, and her degree in accounting and business administration and her work in that area, for this particular spot, I would weigh on the side of Valerie Katanch for the recommendation. And I'm hopeful that, well, not real hopeful that someone decides not to leave the Airport Commission, but if we do have another spot open in the near future, I certainly would see favorably on the other candidates that have applied today, and I would hope that you would keep your application on file. So I would make a recommendation to nominate Valerie Katanch for this particular opening.
I'll support that.
Motion by Inman, seconded by Fleece, and this is for a three-year term?
Three-year term.
Three-year term. And Chris, do you know when the next term comes up? Just out of curiosity.
When the next term.
Next
Oh,
vacancy?
you mean the next vacancy?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I don't have that information,
I
but
believe it'll be at the end of this year.
I think there
End of
is
this
one
year?
at the end of '08.
Because we keep all the resumes, applications on file for at least a year. So with that being noted, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate you coming in.
Can I just make a quick comment,
Please.
too, is that Jim Minster served on the board, and he did just an excellent job, and it's really unfortunate that Jim made a decision not to continue to serve. Just like your gentleman from the Parks and Rec, he'll be sorely missed, but Jim was just a great commissioner, and he really represented the people of Grand Traverse County very, very well.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. All right, thank you very much for coming in.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I just wanted to let the committee know, you do have the ability, if you need to take an intermission, to, put the camera on hold for a short period of time if that's necessary.
Okay, well, let's take a 5-minute break.
And then, could I say one more thing?
Yeah.
Just so you know, the EDC has a special board meeting in here at 10 o'clock, so we have
Well,
to be out by 10.
I need to get to my full-time job, so we'll keep this moving along. So with that, we'll take a 5-minute recess, we'll pause. Yeah, that's... All right, I think we're all back. I'll give a wave to the cameraman. All right, and we're back on. All right, thank you. We've just concluded interviews for the Airport Commission and Veterans Affairs. We're going to move to administration. First is National County Government Week.
Yep. Every year, Commissioner Lemko usually brings this up and says, we really need to start doing something to promote county government. We have not. And so he asked that this go on the agenda for a discussion with you. I thought maybe he would be here to talk with you about it, but he's proposing, this is his proposal. His proposal is that we put together some kind of a plan, and the week of April 6th through 12th have some set of activities to promote county government and what it does in the community.
I think, and then he also requested that maybe we look to be a little more active for 2009. My suggestion was be at the board meeting, maybe this at the end of this month or end of March, we read a proclamation, we inform people, and then look at it for next year as maybe a plan of action. You know, and I talked to Herb a little bit about it. He wasn't saying that we should full-blown, but maybe there's some public service announcements we could make or get some, you know, just even a touch of things as we try to create more awareness.
The other thing is maybe we could also kind of, I'm not sure of the timing on this, but maybe we'll be in a position to plan to take the e-newsletter out that week. And somehow maybe we could do a short article in there as part of it too. Another idea, but whatever you'd like us to do.
So there really isn't a plan though.
We have no plan at this point.
I say we just, consensus that we move it forward. We do a proclamation either at the end of this month or next month. Maybe Herb can bring us a sample for that and get it to Chris. And then we can talk about this more after that. So moving on to boards and committees. Chris, you were going to give us a little update?
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know, and that's something that we've already kind of covered on earlier, that we had the resignations of Paul Grosspeck and Jim Minster. Mr. Minster's we just filled, out of order here a little bit. Also, we had Tom Jenkins' position, and as indicated in your packets, Mr. Jenkins had changed his mind. In the meantime, we did receive one other applicant, and that application will remain on file if there is another opening. And I will send a letter out to let him know that. The other thing, that one of the vacancies that we have, also resource recovery, we have not, I think we received one application, so I postponed that. I added time to it and postponed it until next month to do interviews for that vacancy. The other thing was we do have still 2 vacancies. One was the end of a previous term on the American Legion Vietnam Veterans Association Baseball Committee. We have always based our recommendations based on the American Legion's recommendations because they actually run the baseball committee. So I sent the application that we received to that board. Larry Butcher, who is our staff person, or who is actually the coordinator of the Legion Baseball, looked at that and said, well, for the vacancy that was open, that person was not qualified. They had to be not only a veteran, but they also had to be a member of the American Legion Board. So Mr. Reinhardt is getting a letter saying that he was not qualified. Talking to Mr. Butcher, he has recommended the appointment of John Whitcup, who was previously on the board and is going to be reappointed, and also himself, Larry Butcher. Larry Butcher was off. He had previously been on this board and was off and just was maintained as a staff person for the last year. Now that we have no longer, we don't have the term limitations, as well as they do have a vacancy to where Mr. Butcher would like to be back as an actual member on the board. But that's the recommendation. And also, he did mention that Mr. Reinhardt was going to be used as a coach. So he is still involved in American Legion baseball.
Good. So with that, there's a recommendation that we approve the appointment of John Whitcup and Larry Butcher to the American Legion Vietnam Veterans Association Baseball Committee. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Larry Fleece,
Support.
seconded by Christine Maxbauer. Any further discussion?
Just to clarify that this is not an area we normally will interview on, because these are recommendations coming in from the organization, is that correct?
And that happens time to time from different boards and such.
Right.
All right.
I have a question for Chris.
Oh.
On these other board openings, we had discussed at earlier meetings, sending notification out to the townships. Have we done that?
Yes, we have. And as a matter of fact, the last time that we sent stuff out, we also sent it to the chamber. It was on the chamber's email news that we had that. So we've had some real good, some of the applicants that you have here mentioned that they noticed it on some different things. So there are still two outstanding, while you mentioned that, there's still two outstanding ones where I'm still looking for additional applicants on resource recovery and the Farmland Preservation Board. We did receive one applicant. I'm not sure how qualified they are for the specific position, but I've extended that for an additional month, so hopefully we get some other interest. Maybe some of that will be from what we sent out to the townships.
All right.
Thank you, Chris.
As usual, thank you very much for your hard work on that. All right. We have motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Moving to the part of unfinished business, is there any unfinished business?
Oh, no, Commissioner.
Okay. Second chance of public comment. Yes, Christine.
I got a call yesterday regarding Commission on Aging, the possibility of televising the board meetings. Apparently, there is some interest. People feel that it really helps seniors understand what the Commission on Aging services are offered. So, how, Dennis, do we go about getting those on to, since the meetings are not held here, how do we go about getting those on to Channel 99?
Okay, there would, if they're going to continue to hold the meetings there, they can be done the way we did our board meeting in January. And that is that they can hire one of our people to go to the meeting and videotape it, and then that disc can be played over the weekend on Channel 99. It cannot be done live because they're not set up for that.
Right.
And also I want to say that, that maybe they don't want to change, but I had encouraged Georgia to consider the idea of moving those commission meetings to this room, and that's still available. And I only say that to emphasize the fact that I think as time goes on, more and more people are going to reserve regular time in this room, and it's going to make it more difficult to get it later on. And so two things. We can very easily, if Georgia wants, and I'll call her today, if she wants to have that done and have the meetings videotaped, the only issue is you only get one angle, of course. But if she wants to do that, we can start doing that anytime. The cost is, I think, $20 an hour. It's something minimal. And then what she also wants to do is get a slot on the weekend or some other time that's not reserved as their reserved time for the meeting to be shown.
Larry?
I'm glad you brought that up, because I was thinking about another question on that area, and that is, as we get more interest in the various boards and commissions that are represented by Grand Traverse County, and it is their wish to begin to televise their meetings, I'm just wondering if there should be some set of protocols that perhaps you could come to us and bring to us for adoption or whatever. That would be, they would have an approval from their board, and then they would set up a budget within their budget line item for the cost and the administrative end of the videotaping. So, for example, the Board of Public Works, if they wanted to videotape theirs, that particular situation would come out of their budget line item or whatever. So we would have kind of a common understanding of how this whole thing would progress to the point of not only being placed for videotaping, but if we get into a situation about archiving, and if we get in a situation about the cost factor how do we handle that? Is there a process or procedure?
Yep, I think that's a very good idea. What we've done so far is, I'm handling this at department head meetings, and we've been talking with department heads about the availability of this. What we're waiting for, commissioners, is, as you may recall, the city is managing this operation. The city is hiring the staff. They are sending us bills for our portion of it, but the city is kind of managing the whole situation. And right now, they're working on, and it's only been a couple of months that they've been doing it, but they're working on putting together kind of a policy for room use and those kinds of things. But you're right, as soon as we have that, then what we need to do is kind of piggyback on that, our responsibilities, and what our departments are responsible to do. Now, it's getting to be more and more important because, as Commissioner Maxbauer said, Aging now wants to do it. Planning is going to do it in the next month or two here, I understand. They're going to start televising their meetings.
I was going to say that planning, we actually voted on it, and there's a $40 charge for an hour, I believe, and it comes out of planning.
Right, and that's what I'm telling everybody, it has to come out of your own budget. Brownfield is starting in March, I think, right, Commissioner Smith? I think they're starting televised in March, so it's kind of moving, everybody wants to do it, but it's kind of moving along. But so what I have been telling everybody is you have to be able to fund it yourself, and then you have to get with the city to reserve the time, and we help them do that when it's going to be shown, because, you know, weekends are starting to fill up. Prime time is starting to fill up.
I need to excuse myself because I have business, so I'm going to turn it over to you, Larry, as Vice Chairman.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne.
See you all later.
Sonny.
Just, just a little bit of expansion on that. I know there was quite a discussion at Long Lake Township's meeting on Tuesday night about contracting someone to videotape their meetings and showing it on the government channel. Now, they do have an individual who was coming in and taping it for TV2, and he has given them a proposal to do that. I did not see the proposal to know what kind of rates that is. I somehow or another think that probably we should have some sort of a pool by which these organizations can draw expertise to videotape their meetings. I know that, having watched TV2 on a few occasions, sometimes you get quality product, sometimes you don't. So, I think if we're going to encourage governmental organizations to televise their meetings, we need to make sure that what we are televising is actually a quality product that people can understand, because we're going to get no respect whatsoever if we put garbage out there that people can't hear what's going on or can't see who's talking. So, we're going to have to figure out some way to ensure that what we put on the TV, on the Channel 99, is a quality product that the people can understand. Otherwise, we shouldn't even do it.
Mr.
All right.
Chairman?
Yes.
I just have one other question. Dennis, we're planning on that presentation on how to video stream our meetings, and you mentioned that there was a problem with a contractor. Where are we on that?
Tuesday at your Ways and Means meeting, we're going to do it. We're going to do the demonstration right at the Ways and Means meeting on Tuesday.
Wonderful.
We won't have a salesman here, which sometimes I think is an advantage. We're going to actually remote demo it. Don Sheehan is going to do it for you. It'll be probably the first or second item on your Ways and Means meeting, and we're going to do a demonstration right on these TVs so you can see it.
Okay, great.
And we actually have two companies now that have expressed an interest. We've kind of moved to another company that also seems to have a quality product. So hopefully after you see it on Tuesday, if you like it and you want us to go ahead and pursue it, we're developing the RFPs right now to get that out. Don's working on that so that we can go out and actually get bids.
I just wanted to let you know one more thing. In response to what you just said, Mr. Chairman, I am a part of a board, a newly forming board that is going to try to keep TV2 alive and a viable entity and a service for the community. And one of the things that we have discussed is exactly what you suggested, a pool of experienced camera people who can really put together some quality service, and I will keep you posted.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on that? And I think we had that second public comment, is that correct? We did? Okay. Moving on to other, we have a couple items requested by Commissioner Maxbauer, and just as a side remark, I think that this is a good venue or a way for commissioners to bring up items that they have questions or concerns or would like to bring the attention of the board. And I think this is a good format to do that. And again, as you know, I've asked the chairman maybe to make a recommendation at our board meeting as to how best to do that. But we have an item regarding meeting room policy. Commissioner Maxbauer?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The reason I brought this up was because I received a phone call from a constituent saying, gee, can I rent a room up at the governmental center? So I called and discovered that, yes, anyone may rent a room at the governmental center. And I just wanted to let the public know that the charges for the rooms are as follows. Board of Commissioners committee room is $10. Lower level conference room is $10. The cafeteria is $20. And the commission chambers is $20. And the bookings are through county administration. And I just wanted to let everybody know that that is available to the public.
All right. Any other questions on that matter? Sonny?
I guess the only comment that I would have, and I think this is one of those things that we probably need to evaluate somehow, and I think staff's going to have to do it. Unfortunately, I got to dump something else on Dennis. I see our Board of Commissioners committee room tied up by attorneys taking depositions for sometimes days at a time.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, does that $10, is that per day? Is it per hour? How does that work? I just, when all I see is a price listing that says $10, I see these depositions taking up space for extended lengths of time. They're using electricity, they're using heat, they're using video equipment and all of that type of stuff, screens. My concern is, are we covering our costs with these rooms?
Commissioner Flees first and then Commissioner Maxbauer.
As Chairman Wheelock was talking, it says here, number one on the policy, that the preferences for the use of the city and county government, other community not-for-profit public service organizations may use these rooms when the time is available for the charge outlined below. So it would be my understanding, reading that, it'd have to be a non-profit. It couldn't be like an attorney taking depositions or a citizen, I don't think either.
Well, actually, I did ask. I called Katie because the request that I had was, can I have a baby shower at the governmental center? And the answer was yes.
Administrator Aloya.
I misunderstood that, Commissioner Maxbauer. I thought you received a complaint because someone had heard that that we were going to let a religious group use the facility. And I thought Katie had told you at that time that, in fact, at times we had even had baby showers here. I may have been misunderstood on that. But regardless, the policy has been terribly loose. And if you recall, I came to you last spring and told you the policy needed to be changed. And then I came to you in October of 2007 again and suggested the policy needs to be changed. And frankly, I think it's important to let the public know out there that it's not our routine to allow anyone to use the building, but it has been our routine to allow attorneys to come in and use the building. And I think that was historically because when we were so crowded in the historic courthouse with the district court and the circuit court, there was no place for them to meet. And I think it just sort of started to come over here. And it is a significant problem for us. At the time when I brought it back to you, you said, first you said you didn't want to do anything with it, and then you said, I suggested that maybe what we do is we wait until the district court is done and the historic courthouse renovation is done, and then once more offices are available for those kinds of meetings, we readdress this whole policy. And you agreed, and that's what we're waiting for, is to finish the historic courthouse work. Now, in terms of the costs don't come anywhere near covering, and Dean could tell you that. And it's been a particular annoyance for us because many times that committee room, which is very heavily used, can't access it because we've got people in there all day long. So I really do believe, and I would encourage you when that historic courthouse is done, to consider a new policy that would bring the cost a little more in line, although you may want to have considerations for not-for-profit groups and that kind of thing if you want. and then to kind of redefine who and when it can be used. Because, for example, as Commissioner Maxbauer said, if someone calls us up and says, I understand you had a shower there 2 months ago, and I'd like to do one on this Saturday, and we have to open up the building, and we have to have people here and clean and close up the building for $20, it probably cost us several hundred to do.
Chris?
I just wanted to mention that this policy is only during regular business hours, during the times we are open. We have always said that we don't have the staff to open the building, so it's really only a Monday through Friday, and we try when the cleaning people are going to be here anyway. So we never allow the building to be opened unless it's for city or county staff.
When you say people being here, though, you mean in the evenings of the week, too?
Correct.
As long as we have custodial
Right.
staff.
When the building's open.
Dennis, I think, number one, I think if we stuck to the policy just as it reads, it would cover it. But I think that may be in violation of state statute. Because at the township, this question came up, and it was my understanding that if you rent or allow to be used some portion of your building to one group, you cannot turn another group down. And consequently, Blair Township has a policy, they don't allow any meetings in there other than the government function meetings or other governmental agencies using it for government purposes. So perhaps you could have civil counsel check into that.
I will.
Because that may take care of the whole situation.
Well, that would certainly be easier, but the board will have to decide whether you want to limit other people. And still, Commissioner, that would not solve the problem of these attorneys that are coming in often from out of the area. Many times they're coming from downstate and taking up a room for a whole day to do depositions or whatever.
My suggestion about that, we have the Park Place Motor Inn right across the street. It's private business owners, which is basically what an attorney is. I'm sure the county would get upset if I held some kind of a conference in here. My suggestion to the attorneys would be that they rent a room. And I've never had a deposition taken where it was taken in a public building.
Well, and I have to tell you, I've never seen it so easy to, never had it so easy to have never seen attorneys so happy to give me $10 or $20 for using a room.
But they're
They've never complained once.
They're a profit organization. They're a not-for-profit. So if we just stick to the present policy, that eliminates
The
it.
key, though, is they're often there holding these depositions in conjunction with a trial that they're doing in our courtroom. See, and that's how these got started. So in other words, they're an attorney having a case in our court, they're meeting up here with their clients, and so it kind of is a spin-off. And I think before, maybe, there was a time when they had a place where they could use that in the court. But as we got bigger and bigger and less room, they started looking for other places to meet with their clients. It's for cases primarily that are coming to our court, and they're preparing.
Sonny?
I know, but still, they are a private organization, for-profit. Let them spend some of their profit at the Park Place. I'm sure the Park Place would be glad to accommodate them.
Sonny?
I guess my recommendation, I don't think we're going to be able to cure this thing this morning. So my recommendation is that, either the board or the chairman appoint a subcommittee to evaluate meeting room usages, get with Dean, get with staff about how much we're having, what the actual cost is, and make sure that we're at least covering our costs for these things. And along with that, we're going to have to look at the timeline of when the historic courthouse is available, what kind of meeting rooms will be available in that new area. And we also have some areas in the district court building which could be used to accommodate these type of meetings. I think the problem is we're not scheduling anything over there. They're all coming here because it's kind of the habit we've gotten into, but it's something we definitely need to address because, we have more and more of it all the time. And, I appreciate the fact that this is on the agenda, but I believe that it needs a lot more study. And what I'm going to probably suggest is that we move this forward to the Board of Commissioners meeting, and I will ask for volunteers to sit on a committee with staff to evaluate the meeting room needs and usages on government-owned properties.
Do we have a motion to that effect?
I would like to see, prior to going through all, I agree with Mr. Wheelock, but I would like to see the administration get a legal opinion, because that right there in itself could solve the whole issue.
Why don't we add that as a part of the recommendation?
I would move that we forward this to the Ways and Means, would it be, or full board?
Full board.
I would move that we forward this to the full board for their discussion and/or action.
And with an opinion, legal opinion.
And the legal opinion be supplied at that time by administration.
Is there support?
Support.
All right, discussion.
The only thing I was going to say was, Dennis, you are exactly right that this did start with a complaint from someone about another organization coming here and using the room. But during that conversation that the person who was complaining about this had with Katie, she did say that you're right. We even have baby showers. So I did talk to her, and she said, do you mean to tell me I can have a baby shower in the governmental center? So I did call Katie and specifically ask, may we have a baby shower in the governmental center? She said, yes, we cannot discriminate. And I believe Mr. Fleece is exactly right.
Right.
You know, if you do it for one, you do it for all.
Yep, and in past, just mention this, we've had Bible study groups use this building.
Yeah, it's either all or none.
Yep, right. And I agree.
And that's, I'm sure that's what legal advice is.
Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, passes. All right, moving on to Judge Philip Rogers' letter. Commissioner Maxbauer, you asked that to be discussed?
Yes, I just have one question on this, Dennis, and it regards the last sentence on the, last two sentences on the first page. From Judge Rogers, he states, we offered to recommend to our staff that they give up the defined benefit plan in order to receive the same fringe benefits as district court. Commissioner Wheelock was present when we made that suggestion. County administration refused. Dennis, it was my understanding that we are trying to move employees off the defined benefit plan, and I was wondering why they were not afforded the same benefits as district court. Is there something missing here?
I believe that there is. Dean and Brenda did a lot of the negotiating, so they're here to address this too. I don't know, do you want me to make a comment, or do you guys want to answer it? It doesn't matter to me. We've both been involved, and of course Commissioner Wheelock has too. This whole process, yes, that was always our goal. It's always been our goal to try to equate, which is part of why the Siegel study is being done. And he is correct in the first part of this. And I don't know if the draft minutes said it was the supervisors, but he is right. Only the circuit court, all circuit court employees have the defined benefit program. No one else has it. That was my intention, if that's not what I said. So he's correct. But it is not just their supervisors over there, it's also all their employees. Mm-hmm. And that's a big concern. So we went into this with the idea that we wanted to try to get that defined benefit gone, because they're the only employees that have it, those two groups of circuit court. And we wanted to bring the other benefits in line with everybody else, the way we did with everybody. We have taken away, we have bargained away longevity. We have, whenever someone's taken less of a benefit, like the 1040 prescription, we've given them more money in exchange for that. So we try to be very consistent with everybody. In Commissioner Wheelock and my meeting with the judges, Judge Powers said, well, we just want whatever the district court had. And we said, okay, we'll be glad to provide you that information. There are a number of differences between the district court and the circuit court, and yes, the defined benefit program is not in the district court, but I think the judges felt that the district court had pay was considerably different. And what we also found was circuit court has different holidays, more holidays, district court, or excuse me, more vacation. District court has, besides having the defined benefit, they also have the 1040, and I didn't know if circuit had the 1040. We were trying to get the 1040. Trying to get the 1040 prescription plan. And district court also gave up longevity, which circuit court hadn't. And district court also took a significantly reduced retroactive pay when they settled their contract. So we went back to the judges and said, okay, what about this and this? Are your employees willing to take all these other reductions? And we had some discussion about that, but we never, correct me if I'm wrong, we never got an indication from them that that was acceptable. Am I wrong? I'm correct. So there were other issues besides the issue of defined benefit. We kept going on and on and on. We were coming into 2008, and we still had not been able to get them to agree to giving up longevity, giving up the retroactivity. We hadn't even talked about those issues. And in addition to that, we determined that because of their funding level under the defined benefit plan, it would be a minimum of, well, it would be several years at least before we would have funded that a significant enough portion where they could even be eligible to go to a defined contribution plan. So they were basically giving up nothing because they couldn't get off the defined benefit plan anyway. So looking at that and talking to the chairman and looking at the fact that the Siegel study would be done, and then we could really get some third party to objectively tell us how their benefits compare with district court. We thought it was wise just to sign the one-year agreement and say, let's deal with it after that when we have all the information. And I think, and I talked to Judge Powers personally. I think, Dean, you came with me, or maybe you weren't with me that time. And they said, yep, okay, that's what they'll do. So that's what we did.
Sonny?
Well, I guess, I think everyone in the room has heard me say repeatedly, I want to see a master contract for all county employees. This idea that we have 16 different contracts with 16 different bargaining units drives me absolutely nuts. When Judge Powers, Judge Rogers, Dennis, and I met at the Minervas on at least 2 or 3 occasions, I guess but 3 times?
I think 2, but...
Anyway, we met and we talked about they wanted the contract to match the district court contract. Well, then when we evaluate the district court contract, they wanted to pick and choose which parts of that contract they wanted to approve to. It wasn't they were going to take the whole offer for the district court. They wanted, they were willing to talk about parts of it, but they weren't willing to talk about giving up their longevity, additional personal days, and the retroactivity portion. Well, it's easy to say I want that contract if I get to pick and choose which part, but that's not the way negotiations are done. And then Dean and Brenda went and met with them, and I think one thing that we were all firmly committed to, or at least from my perspective, was we were not going to commit long-term into a contract until the completion of the Siegel study. That's why we're paying for that study to be done. Yes, I'm as disappointed as everyone else that we don't have that thing completed, because I really thought we'd have it by last fall. We still don't, but hopefully, I'm encouraged repeatedly by all the people involved that when it is finished, we will have a quality document that we can use. That's more important than worrying about getting it a month earlier or 2 months earlier.
Well, I just wondered if there was something that was left out of the letter, and clearly, I'm hearing there was.
I think it was really just a matter of when it came right down to it as time went on, and you looked at what we would be making a partial commitment to bring them in line with district court, and it was all being based on what a bunch of our perceptions, judges, our perceptions were of the comparability of salaries and benefits. It just didn't make sense to go into a long-term commitment when we were going to have this study done very soon.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
Do we need any follow-up comments from Brenda or Dean?
I would like to make just one. When you read the letter, it's hard to distinguish that there are actually 2 groups here. There's the supervisors group, which currently has 2 employees, and then there's also the association. And just one brief comment on the defined benefit retirement. The association, which is the larger group of employees, based on the last actuarial valuation, was 65.5% funded, so they would have been able to move to the DB, but we weren't successful in negotiating that. The other group, the supervisors, which has 2 employees currently in it, is only 37% funded. So I just wanted to be clear that there's actually, when you read through the judge's letter, there are paragraphs where he's speaking of the association, and there are paragraphs where he's speaking of the supervisors, so it's kind of hard to
Dean, what percentage do you have to be funded in order to be able to make the switch?
In October of 2005, MERS took action, you had to be 50% funded. And it's somewhat misleading, but it's not only by bargaining unit, but it's also based on the retirement plan as a whole. And I think recently they've gone to a 60% funded level. So the county as a whole, we're waiting to get our 2007 valuation. That's probably 2 months out. Based on the last one, we were just under 50% funded. And then each of the individual groups or bargaining units have their individual funding levels.
Commissioner Wheelock.
I guess the only other thing that I'd like to add is we need to remember that these negotiations are done with union representatives for these two groups and the representatives of those groups. But make no mistake, that if the judges do not approve that negotiation, it will not get signed.
I just want to add one more thing. I do think it's important to note that we did make a proposal to the units, both of them, that the defined benefit be grandfathered at such time as they did meet the eligibility requirements for that to happen. And with the association, on 2 occasions, we had tentative agreements. However, after they had discussions, they came back again, so.
All right, thank you. All right, does that pretty much resolve that issue?
Yeah, it does,
All right.
thank you.
Dennis, we have one other issue, and that's a verbal update, and it's 9:50.
Can I do it quickly?
You do it in 5 minutes, or?
I'll do it, yes, I will, because
Okay.
I want to get it, because the other commissioners have already
You
heard
need
it.
to clear the room by 10.
Okay, so just an update on some of the things going on. I wanted you to know that the Sheriff's Department has been asked to submit a proposal for offering police services, law enforcement services at the airport. We did this once before for about 2.5 or 3 years during the whole transition of the new terminal. The city police have also been asking to put in a proposal, so they're just evaluating what options are. We will be putting in a proposal on that. I wanted the commissioners to know that last time we did this, for that 2.5 year period, we did it with overtime and those kinds of things, and frankly, that was extremely stressful on the department. That's a long time to do a lot of overtime. We were having a lot of illness and other things that came up as a result of all the hours of work. So the sheriff talked to me, or Nate did, and said, this time, if we're going to propose it, we'd like to propose it and look at hiring new employees. They're talking about a 4.5 to 5 year contract. And what I told Nate was that I would talk with you, but that I personally did not have a problem with that and actually preferred hiring additional officers so we don't put that extra stress on our regular staff, with the understanding that if we're successful and you decide to do this, because it's a board decision down the road, and again, it's very early in the proposal, that the sheriff understands very clearly these officers are there during the duration of the contract, and there's no guarantee that if the contract ends, they would be there and we would fund them out of general fund. So I wanted you to be aware that that's in its very infancy, but we always are out there doing proposals like this, and I wanted you to know what's going on.
If I could just make a side remark. The Airport Commission has been dealing with this issue, and there's a concern that with regard to the requirement to either have a police presence in the airport that would be armed, or it would be a private security company that would be licensed to have firearms. And the whole question has come to the point where it would be time now to go out and see if we can get proposals from law enforcement agencies to come in and do the armed side of the security for the airport and compare that to the security side and weigh the benefits of both. So this is something that we've encouraged, and this primarily why we're looking at it from a budget aspect as well as from the proper police coverage aspect. So, okay.
Next issue, this is on the front of the court, who have temporarily moved from the old courthouse, the historic courthouse, to here. The issue we have is, you remember I told you that in order to move them here, we had to move 350 file boxes full of all their files. Well, in fact, there's a meeting going on right now with them where we're trying to do the digital imaging. You approved that project, and we're going to image all of their information. Well, the timing of this is, we're being told that end of April, beginning of May, that historic courthouse construction will be done. We are not far enough along on the digitizing issue, and so what I wanted to let you know is one of the things we're considering is, rather than move the friend of the court back there when it's complete, let's say at the 1st of May, and moving 350 file boxes back, we may keep them here an extra month or two. and I think the judges are supportive of this, until all those files can be digitized so we don't have to move them. It just seems to make sense rather than move everything twice. So I wanted you to know about that. I put in your mailboxes the Kaufman FOIA, which is the property owners who are suing about the dam removal. I put that in there. I wanted you to know we've answered all those FOIA requests. They're insinuating that when the thaw came and the rains came in January, that we artificially raised the level of the pond. And then when it went back down, that we needed a permit to take it back down. And so they wanted all our permits from the DEQ, and we don't believe we did, but wanted you to know that all that's been given to them. An issue with City and Garfield Township, you recall some time ago I talked with them about the idea of having a solid waste authority. And at the time when we had our full staff at Resource Recovery, they asked me if our staff could help them evaluate what it would take to be an authority, put RFPs together for bidding and all that stuff. And I told them that if it was legal to do that with our finances, that we would. You know now that it is legal to do, but I have sent a letter back to the city and to Garfield Township saying, at this point in time, we do not have the expertise on staff to be able to provide that. We would be glad to consider bringing to you a request to spend some money to hire a consultant of their choice to actually do that evaluation. I think they preferred us to do the evaluation, but it's just clear to me, we don't have that expertise right now. And so I'm asking them to consider doing it and then we would come to you for the money for that. But you may hear about it, because I think they really wanted us to do it. I think you all got copies, but here's the letter from Mr. Peterson, who has bought the materials in the dam, in our dam properties. He is proposing a lot of things, but one of the things he's saying is maybe there's a way we can share and start operating the dams again. All this will be evaluated, but he's also raised an issue of security and saying the buildings need to be more secured to protect his equipment. My feeling we're still looking at it, but my feeling is it's his equipment. You know, we had nothing to do with the fact that he bought it. We'll lock the doors, but he wants us to put some security systems in, spend money on that, and basically what I will come back and talk to you, but what I intend to tell him is if he wants security and he's willing to pay for it, we'll put what security in there he wants. But it's just an issue, and it will start coming up at the dam meeting, so I wanted you to know it. Twin Lakes accessible property access bids, our handicap project, come in tomorrow, so we'll be doing those tomorrow. Some of you may be aware we took that emergency management issue back to the region. Remember, we talked to you about the fact that they were putting all this work on us and our emergency management local work wasn't getting done?
Right.
Well, we went back with the proposal and basically they said no. So we'll continue to keep you updated, but we may be in a position where we say, well, we can no longer do it because it's not allowing us to get our work done here in Grand Traverse County. And so I just wanted you to know that, and I'll give you more information on that as we get it. Maybe next week I'll have some more. And then, so you all remember, March 6th, David Bennett will be here. It will be a joint meeting between this county board and the Community Corrections Board, and it will be shown live on TV. And that's where Mr. Bennett, our jail consultant, will come in and evaluate the progress we've made since our study back in 2002 or 2003, and give us some more recommendations on what we can do to further enhance our management of the jail population. He will also be meeting with judges, sheriff, prosecutor on that same day.
The Maple Bay request for proposals, is that going to happen this month?
I'll do my best.
Are you backed up still?
I'll do my best. What Commissioner Inman is talking about is putting out RFPs to find someone to do gas mining and exploration on Maple Bay property. And I know it's important. I have not had time to get to that, frankly. I do have an opinion now from our attorney, and what I'm intending to do is we actually developed a contract that could be used. For those of you who may not remember, the Parks Board supported this and Physical Resources supported this. And so what I'm doing now is we're putting together an RFP that will include an actual contract on what we will expect if someone is going to do exploration on our property, and they will then fill in the blanks of how much they'll pay us and those kinds of things. So I will do my best to get it out by the end of the month, Commissioner.
Okay. Right. Sonny.
One other thing, just in conversation with Katie the other day, we do have a confirmation with Peter Cole to come and do the open meetings discussion and freedom of information discussion.
Training.
She was trying to coordinate a timing on it.
Yeah, it's going to be on March 7th. which is a Friday, and I think we're trying to do 9 to 12. We will invite all the commissioners, of course, all our department heads, all of our board and committee members, and then all the staff, such as Chris, who work directly with boards in these meetings. So it'll be a training, of course, it'll be open, and we're looking at using Twin Lakes to do that.
All right, excellent.
We just don't have a time set up for it yet.
All right, good.
And the time on,
Breakfast, muffins,
time on David Bennett.
7 o'clock. David Bennett is 7 o'clock. And that, as I said, it'll be a joint meeting with Community Corrections.
And we'll get a notice out on that.
Yes, you will.
Okay. All right.
PM.
Any other business before the board, before we adjourn? Just one comment. This committee makes recommendations to the full Board of Commissioners at the end of the month. So these are recommendations that would be going to the Board of Commissioners on their consent calendar. With that, we have a motion for adjournment.
So
Moved by Commissioner Maxbauer, supported by Commissioner Flees. All in favor? Aye. We stand adjourned at 10 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you.